He turned water into wine, I turned whiskey into songs. Too many second chances, too many too far gones. Gave me grace along the way, took my heart and led me home. Don't you see, it's a God thing for me. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today, mostly the state, with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community and lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guest Ann Lowery. Ann Lowery is the new executive director for Tennessee Stands and is deeply committed to self-government rooted in a biblical worldview. She is dedicated to educating Christians about their role in the civic arena and to helping families build a lasting legacy that secures freedom for future generations. Tennessee Stands educates, equips, and empowers all citizens to boldly assert their unalienable rights given to us all, not by man, but naturally by God. Therefore, we the people unite as a movement committed to preserving Tennessee's conservative values for years to come. They state on their website, tennesseestands.org, government exists to secure those rights and only draws its legitimacy from our consent. And as such, we have a duty to hold elected officials accountable to acting only within the limited authority they draw from our Constitution of the state of Tennessee. We each bear the burden of educating ourselves and standing up to all manner of oppression. Our nation and our great state will only endure because we sacrifice to preserve it, they say. They try to accomplish their education efforts by producing engaging videos, media, the Freedom Matters podcast, live events around the state of Tennessee, and providing social commentary on relevant issues in the state. Let's meet her. Hello, Ann. How are you today?
Hey, Steve. I'm very well. Thank you.
It's cold and overcast here in Middle Tennessee. What's going on over that side of Signal Mountain?
Yeah, so I'm looking out the window. It's nice gray skies. If I feel like in Tennessee, the weather gives us all whiplash, from beautiful sunny skies. And then we had a tornado warning. I don't know if you did or a tornado watch
We sure
a few
did.
days ago.
Yeah.
Then woke up to snow. It was like a blizzard dropped out of the sky.
I think they call this false
happening?
spring. It's the spring before the spring. Yeah, exactly.
It's
The winter
crazy.
before the spring. That groundhog's, terrible thing.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations on your new role. You are now the I think you're called executive director of Tennessee Stands.
I am.
Tennessee Stands was founded in Middle Tennessee. You're over there in Eastern Tennessee, Chattanooga, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, which I find to be much more conservative. Goldwater country before you were born. Tim Burchett's over there, for example. With you at the wheel, might we see it even more conservative going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll say the problems that we have here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and even I would venture to say in East Tennessee, are very different than the problems that Republicans face in more of the central areas where you're living at, and where Gary is living, and where he founded the organization from. It is almost night and day what we see. I personally have a great relationship with our delegation to all of our representatives, specifically one of our senators. Just a great relationship, very open to working with the grassroots conservatives, people with a biblical mind view or worldview. So it's really interesting as I'm learning. It's almost like the state is truly divided. I don't know if it's the three grand divisions or if it's just divided in half between people open to working with the grassroots and then people that are more hesitant.
Well, there are three stars on the flag, and that's because Shelby County, where Memphis is, and Nashville in the middle, and where you are, Chattanooga and Knoxville, you may as well be North Carolina sometimes, although they've got
Right?
their
It's
issues too.
wild.
It really
Yeah.
is. And there's two time zones. So quite often it's really two states, which is why I find this fascinating that a grassroots organization founded in Williamson County with its issues, which we're going to talk about, is
Mhm.
now being handled by somebody from over there. Where are you actually from?
I'm actually from the Buffalo area. I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. I
Mhm.
moved to the DC suburbs when I was a toddler, lived there until about 19 is when I moved here to Chattanooga. So I've been
Okay.
here. I'm now 43. So I have
Uh,
been in Chattanooga. I've been a Tennessee resident for longer than I have anywhere else.
I would have never asked that, so I'm glad you volunteered. But it sounds like you are familiar with a snow job if you come from Buffalo, New
Oh,
York. So
yes.
you
Yes,
see right through these
absolutely.
politicians. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is, and before there was a Tennessee Stands, there was a AFTTN, AFP, sorry, my bad, my AFP,
Okay.
Americans for Prosperity, which is the Koch brothers founded organization. The Koch brothers are very important in the Republican Party, so we just have to
Hmm.
lay that out there.
Hmm.
But over there, there is also one. Chattanooga, I think, is also where they are. There's one in Western Tennessee too, which is where Memphis is. Are the
Hmm.
people that make up that organization more in line with you over there, like solidarity, like-minded? Because it seems at times here, and Tennessee Stands only about 4 years old, they were in opposition to stands, certain candidates, issues, say like school vouchers, going to private schools, which is
Hmm.
definitely more a Williamson County issue, I believe, than say Knox County. I think, you tell me, there are 95 counties and Williamson and Davidson are just two.
Right. Right. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I do not know the influence of AFP here in the Hamilton County area. They do not have a large presence, as far as I know. I've been very active in the conservative community, at least for the last 5 years. Was a public school teacher for 13 years prior to coming. Well, I worked in public schools until, let's see, 2018. And the AFP has never, I have never even heard of them until following Tennessee Stands in the last probably 2 years.
Interesting. Well, that says a
Yeah.
lot.
So,
I think taking it out of their backyard and moving it over the mountains, the Smoky Mountains, is probably a good thing because it will become more like-minded, at least they say, as opposed
yeah.
to adversarial, which is a big problem with the Republican Party leading to the midterms. I find is that they're splitting themselves into pieces, and to be unified is more important, obviously, than to be divided.
Yeah,
In the
totally.
70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, um, politicians and politics, it was like a once every 2, 4, and if you care about senators, every 6 year thing. The
Hmm.
last 2 decades, it seems, when you were active, I was active, it seems like it's become an everyday thing, like a business. You have to watch your bottom line every day, like a business. And people have become highly paid. They used to be volunteers, they used to be grassroots, they used to not be paid. It wasn't a business. The left does this in a way bigger fashion. Maybe not in Tennessee, maybe not Eastern Tennessee, but for sure where I come from, Seattle, where you came from in Buffalo,
Hmm.
absolutely. What challenges are you finding as a grassroots organizer of the right?
I would say, as a grassroots organizer, my greatest challenge at this point is actually a lack of knowledge from the citizens. I think people have no idea, good and bad, what is happening in the legislative session. People are shocked as I post on social media several times a day, especially during the session. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are our big days because that's when the committees are meeting. And I just post, hey, Tennessee Stands, here's a bill. These are the facts. This is what this bill would do. Here's an action item if you'd like to take action. And the comments are shocking sometimes because people just don't know. And like I said, there's actually some really great legislation that is being discussed in committees right now. Today at 1 o'clock, I'm watching a few of those. That would be great for our state, and people don't know. So it's easy to just throw shade and throw blame on people. But then we have to also acknowledge when people do good things, right? Even if it's people that may not always align with us as conservatives, to still acknowledge, hey, that was a really great bill. So my greatest challenge at this point And I'm still new to Tennessee stands, but my greatest challenge is educating the public for sure.
100%. Yeah, I have to send emails all the time with bill numbers, and I put the emails and phone numbers of these legislators because they're like, who? I didn't know that
Right.
person. Yeah. And these are people that
Yeah.
come from other states like California who literally saw what could happen if you don't pay attention for 2 seconds. They'll
Right.
run right over you. And
Right.
and so therefore, even in a red state is my question. You're finding this even in a red state, this apathy, this low, what do they like to call it? Low education voters or low information
Yeah.
voters.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think people, we saw they all come out for the presidential election. In the midterms, they just many people don't even know it's election season.
Or primaries.
They have no idea, and they don't really know the impact of the primary, and that's where the magic happens, is at the primary.
That's why it's
And if
called a
you are
primary.
not a right, if you're not a primary voter, you're I guess the power that you have as a citizen, as a Republican, and Democrats have the bona fide rules too, that theirs is just a little bit different. But for a Republican Party, in order to be bona fide and have your voting power in your the local county elections, that's vital. But people don't know it, and so they just stay out of the primary because they don't know that. So it's really the machine is really created so that people have no idea that they don't have power, as much power as they could have, if they stay home during these primaries.
Yeah. And the professional politicians know this full well and they take full
Yep.
advantage of this. They want everybody to be
Right.
this. Have you found like Williamson, and I'm new too, I've only been here for a little over 4 years,
Okay.
that they are getting as much of an influx of out-of-staters or illegals as we are. And so the demographics are changing as well as the not only the information on current events, but they just don't even know what Jeffersonian democracy really is. And if you come from California, they didn't teach that in the civics books in high school.
Right. I really don't know the demographics of Williamson County. I do know, I was just talking to a friend of mine there, and she's from the Washington area as well. And she was saying, people are moving in because it is a higher income bracket, right, in Williamson County generally. And so you have a lot of people with a little bit more financial, blessings, that they're moving in from California. They're moving in from these other countries where their dollar can be stretched. And once they get here, it's like, oh, praise God, I am in the motherland, and they
Welcome to
just,
America. Yeah.
yeah, they're done, and they get right to work and provide for their families. And they're done because they're just so happy to be in the red state of Tennessee, but they have no idea the policies and the impact of their, as people just want to sit in their homes and put their head in the sand. Our state we're going to turn purple. I think it's a little far off. I don't think we're not an emergency situation. I mean, what we're seeing in Texas, that's an emergency situation. I think Tennessee, where our emergency looks just a little bit different.
Yeah, and if you're from Washington, they should know it doesn't take long to switch from a
Right.
relatively centrist conservative state, business friendly, to an actually socialist hell. So they should
Right.
be very weary, like I have been, to tell everybody, don't do that, don't do that, don't Tennessee,
Yeah,
don't California your Tennessee, don't Washington your
that's
Tennessee.
right.
And the redder the state, the bigger the target. So Tennessee needs to pay attention. It would be interesting if
Yeah.
one day we see 51, 52 states and Tennessee is actually split in three because, like Virginia did, they just couldn't agree on things.
Nope.
And if liberal Nashville is going to drive the ship, why would conservative Chattanooga stick around
Right.
just to pay taxes into a NFL stadium they're never going to see? So you got to be
Right.
careful.
Yep.
This is important. This is what stewardship is supposed to be: potholes and grassroots politics. So
Hmm.
you're saying Tennessee isn't paying attention, which is kind of
Hmm.
an American phenomenon. We can't really just blame them. But
Right.
what issues do you find most frustrating that folks won't get activated for? That you think they really should be? Paul Revere, the redcoats are coming, but they're just not.
That is a great question. I think emotionally, we see conservatives really jumping at any legislation or any chance they have to talk about illegal immigration. That pulls on our emotions. That pulls and to be honest with you, I think the right, just as the left, they play on our emotions, right? Propaganda exists on both sides. So we have to be very careful of putting all our emotions onto one side, including whether it's illegal immigration. Right now, there's a big abortion discussion happening in our state. I was just up there. I try to go to the Capitol once a week because I do live in Chattanooga. So it's about a 2.5 hour drive. I have a 3-year-old. I do like to see her, you know.
Real life, yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. But I was just up there and I was talking to someone. I thought, if you feel, and I don't mean to be hyper spiritual, but you feel the presence of the enemy in the Capitol sometimes. And I went up the day after HB 570 was actually didn't even get a chance to be heard, which was the bill that would give equal protection to the unborn. And it was almost like just this feeling of like there is such a stronghold. People are not willing to open their minds to maybe a different thought pattern in some of these high emotion topics that like abortion, but also like illegal immigration. And I think those are topics where I think conservatives really need to take some time and pray, but also wrap their minds about the facts and not be so easily swayed about emotional pleas from both sides, but to maintain some factual guardrails so that they will jump onto legislation that makes sense, and to really to help our legislators, because our job is we the people. There needs to be a relationship. There needs to be the opportunity to pick up the phone and call your representative and ask questions. Why did you support this bill? Why did you not support this bill? And so those two just come to mind, the illegal immigration and abortion, because I feel like I'm just in it on both sides or
Mhm.
both of those topics right now.
Well,
But
there are
again,
a ton of illegal immigration bills pending. We haven't seen the
tons of them.
resolutions yet, but we could look almost like a canary in the coal mine at two from last week of all places. You said you were there, you got to see it
Yeah.
with the fluoride bill.
Yes.
They didn't listen to the science and they went with one vote that didn't let it out of committee. And I'm pretty sure that the whipping I've seen is that it would pass in the committee,
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, in the full Senate and full House.
The
And so,
floor.
yes, so we could solve a problem there, but that one person in the committee decided not to go with it. And so it sits. That's not representing the people. The second
No.
one, the one you talk about, Jody wrote a bill that would have been,
hmm
I think, first in the nation, giving the unborn the same equal rights as any human being
Yes.
anywhere. We fight wars for this.
Yes.
And they couldn't get a second to even discuss to vote on it in committee to then let it go out to the floor to see what the will of the people in the other 94 counties wanted to talk about
Correct. They didn't even give him a first.
up first.
There was no motion. They
So no
sat
debate at all.
silent. Nope. And I'll tell you, there were over 200 people that filled the halls of the Cordell Hull building to support the bill. People flew in from other states, drove from our state to testify on behalf of that bill,
Hmm.
and even testified against the bill. I think that's what's important, is that both sides of the argument had an opportunity to be heard, but the committee members silenced them.
Mm.
And that to me, I mean, that makes me so angry.
Yeah.
We cannot resort to the strategy of the left. The left seeks to silence people that don't agree. We can't. We will lose it. I
Yeah.
had, I write a commentary once a week and I always get feedback from people. And sometimes the feedback is, hey, I actually don't agree with you. And I respond every time. And I'm so grateful that people would take the time and say, hey, Ann, I actually see this differently and this is why. And then we can have a civil conversation. I'm not right about everything. And I want to learn. And so when the population health subcommittee didn't even allow Jody to speak, that's not good. That is a Republican committee, and they did not even allow another Republican to speak.
I'm very reminiscent of something that happened last year. We'll talk about that in a second. So
Okay.
we are in session right now. Only a
Yes.
few weeks left. Commit,
Yeah.
it ends in April. Here we are,
Yep.
March 18th, having this show. I think you folks are going to be listening to this next week, but it's still the same.
Yeah.
But committees are killing bills. Let's just put it that
They
way.
are.
Not being
Yeah.
voted on in the full House or Senate, and seeing what the other people have to say or want, especially the voters. and they're killing these bills. Those two are now past tense, fluoride and the right
Yep.
of life, let's just say. So
Hmm.
some bad things are also dying, and that's fine. We don't want to have to fight all these fights on all these fronts. But what are you watching now for the rest of the session?
Yeah, I'm looking at my list here. Representative Bolso has a bill. It's HB, let's see, 1474, and this would ban all pride flags from any publicly funded building. So all government buildings could no longer hang a pride flag or acknowledge Pride Month. To me, that's a huge win. I live in Hamilton County. My neighbor is Chattanooga. I'm in the county, thank God. We purposefully did not want to live in Chattanooga. I do not want to pay taxes to the mess of the city that is. But every June, our Chattanooga mayor lights up City Hall with the Pride colors. And he is very much supportive of Pride Month. So for me, looking on at this bill, that would cancel all of that. Something a profane statement comes to mind, so I can't say that. All of the leftist ideology that taxpayers don't have to pay for that is a huge step in the right direction. That bill has rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled. So
Hmm.
I do not know. It's been on schedule for weeks to be heard. But
Hmm.
like you said,
It
right
it
now,
actually failed last year. I know the person who wrote that bill and
oh,
gave it
did
to Gino, and it failed yeah, every time. But yeah, it's
isn't
got its
that
work to do.
shocking?
Yeah,
It is shocking. I don't know. It blows my mind.
yeah.
Another bill that's really important. It's let's see, I think in an hour. Yeah, about 30 minutes. It's on the calendar to me in the House Judiciary Committee, and that's HB 1971. And
Yeah.
that's the bill that a lot of conservatives are very concerned about. It's a bill that would restrict a citizen from suing the state or seeking injunctive relief from the state if their constitutional rights have been impacted it in any way without
Let's
having
talk
the
about that for a second. So I
okay.
found his first few years, which coincided with my first few years, very conservative and commendable. He was fighting the Biden administration, but now AG Skrmetti, he's behind that bill, which basically keeping citizens from petitioning the government when they deem
Yeah.
an action is unconstitutional. Tennessee Stands makes a point of being constitutionally sound in all their arguments. This must alarm you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's odd. I agree. I was like, well, wait a second. I thought he was so supportive of constitutional rights and citizens and things that we all protect and hold dear. So this was a little odd when it popped up, and it's crazy. I was at the Capitol the day that it got made public, I guess you'd say, and nobody at the Capitol was even talking. I had no idea. It was Gary called, was like, SOS, we've got to fight this. But it's just interesting to be in the Capitol that day and there not be any discussion about it. Nobody even knew that it was coming up. So that was just an interesting thing to see firsthand. But it is very concerning because you think of what happened in COVID, and the government, overreached their territory for everyone in this country, but specifically here, we had a Republican supermajority and we were all locked down. People lost their jobs because they wouldn't get the vaccine. We all saw it. So what this bill would do is, if you would have to prove harm before you could fight for any type of injunctive relief from the state. And we have, which we all know, there's going to be another COVID. We're not done. These little pandemics are going to keep happening. So when the next one comes, we have to actually live through it and prove that we were negatively impacted by it, instead of just being able to wave the red flag of saying, hey, this isn't right. You can't take these rights from us, because we have a sound mind and can see that. We actually have to wait until we're harmed and then pay money
And
to go through that
COVID is
process.
one good example in recent memory, but I mean, this goes back 250 years of our country's laws.
Yeah,
All precedent would basically be said that if we voted on it and made it a grievance, you no longer therefore have that grievance. It negates every single constitutional protection that there really is. So that could be First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, 14th
it's
Amendment,
true.
everything except 17th, because our senators are not going to let us take it away. Um,
Right.
so. yeah, COVID is a great example, but it goes down to if you were harmed, it's in the same era when they're trying to get state liability waivers for chemical companies, right? So if you
Right.
can't sue your chemical company for harming you, you can't sue the state for funding the chemical company for harming you, you can't sue anybody. What's the point? There may as well not even be courts. Do you feel the idea of vouchers, and do you think that we should be doubling it, like Lamberth's bill that just moved yesterday out of committee allows for, I think 600 million now, maybe 300 million. I can't even keep
Yeah, I think
track.
300. Yeah,
300,
yeah.
300 current law to go to six or
No,
150 to
it
go to
would,
six?
yeah, 150 to go to three.
Three.
If I remember, if I, yeah. Mhm.
Doubling the number of children anyway. What's your thoughts on this? It's going to be the largest line item in the state of Tennessee's budget very soon.
Yeah, yeah, it's really frustrating. And for me, like I shared, I was a public school teacher for 13 years in Hamilton County. Ideally, at one point, I was a huge proponent of the public school system. I went to public schools in the DC suburbs in Northern Virginia. They were great schools at the time. I mean, that was again over 20 years ago, but they were great schools. I received a wonderful public education. And so when I moved to Tennessee, I thought, I want to be a teacher in the public school system. And it didn't take a lot of time to realize that, Tennessee schools were pretty behind the mark compared to the Northern Virginia schools, just even through going through the, university system here and to get my degree. But I think now what's happened is we don't even have data to identify what families receive these vouchers. That is a huge concern to me. Is one, it's another welfare system. I don't support that. But two, teachers live and die based on data. The public school system takes data on every student in every single classroom, whether it's through all of the testing that they do, whether it's through if there's any type of reading disability or something that pops up, we are tracking data. There are weekly data points taken on every kid in order to make a decision that's best for that child. But then if you watch the committees yesterday, Jody Barrett had a bill that was just asking for data, just asking for how many students in each county applied for a voucher, how many students in each county received a voucher, what schools, are they public, are they private? What's the income brackets for these families? What's the race? What's the gender? Let's break it all down. It didn't pass. It is shocking to me that we are willing to give away so much money but not collect any data. But what's interesting is there's another bill that is passing that will collect immigration data. So the legislature is willing to collect data on what students are not here illegally, but we're not willing to track where the money's going.
I think that's a watered down bill as well. It's not as
Oh yeah,
strict as it
yeah,
last.
it is.
Yeah, so they'll have a nice report, but whether they'll share it with us or not, we don't really know. And they're certainly not going to give it to ICE.
No, certainly not. But it's not consistent. It's
Yeah,
not consistent.
no.
They only want to track data. And I don't know. Is it they're only doing it so that they can look good to the Republicans that are, fighting against, immigration? Maybe. I do. I'm at this point. I'm like, I'll support. I will support any data collection. It's important. I do wish it had more teeth. Last year when Watson brought it, it definitely had more teeth, but it's all, they took it all off for whatever
Yeah, it's very
reason.
similar to demanding that the TBI, do a trafficking report. Okay, now what? And then it's very similar
Mhm.
to saying, okay, we're going to ban geoengineering in our skies. And then when it came time to say, okay, and if you do it, we're going to charge you 100 grand per. Nah, we're not going to go that way. So it's like it's in the
No.
books, but we kind of don't really enforce it. And back
Right.
to my Washington example, or
Hmm.
your friend from Washington.
Hmm.
Look how fast your old Virginia changed.
I
I
know.
mean, it took 30 days to wipe out all Youngkin's gains, and his claim to fame
Yep.
was flipping school boards because the
Yep.
people didn't like it. So it's very fleeting. Do you think Tennessee is on that slippery slope?
I mean, I think we're all right. I think it would be foolish for me to assume that we're not. I would rather be on a proactive position on the I'd rather be proactive and not wait for things to fall. I have a hard time believing that Tennessee will go all the way blue. Now, I'm sure that's what people in Colorado thought, people in Washington thought. I don't know what it is about Tennessee that I'm a little hesitant. I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon of we're going to be blue, we're going to be blue. I could see us going more purple for sure, or even just a light red even. But at this point, as of today, I'm not afraid of the state turning, like going the way of Virginia. Virginia is hard. I mean, the Northern Virginia is a very blue area with so many people living there and working in the city in DC. And that plays a huge part. We don't have Chattanooga's blue, right? But it's a small city. Nashville is the concern, right? That's the enemy's camp. But Knoxville, Chattanooga, though they be blue cities, their impact as a state, I think, is pretty small still.
So I jumped ahead, but not all private schools are equal.
Okay.
We like to kind of lump them all together, and some of them people close their eyes and they think of a Christian school and they think that's
Yeah.
usually private, but that's not really the case. Some of them are Jewish and some of them are Muslim too, and some of them don't really teach what we would want to have taught in my growing up in the 70s and yours in the 80s, etc. So is that sector growing as fast there on the east side as it is here in Texas? Because the debate, the critics say, Jody Barrett said in the bill about the vouchers, it's enough to fund a Muslim school, but it isn't enough to fund a Christian school, especially here in Williamson County. I mean, there's about 14 grand. You're getting 7,000 a voucher. I think it's 6 or so for a Muslim school and a Jewish school. So are we kind of tipping the scales towards less Tennessee valued education by doing this, now doubling it, or do you not see that to be the case?
Yeah, and I think my greatest concern actually with the school voucher program funding Muslim schools is the lack of Republican awareness. I think that, I mean, you hear Republicans say all the time, and I just got emails after my commentary this week focusing on Islam in Tennessee, that Islam is a religion of peace, and how dare we say otherwise? And then also the argument that our founding fathers, this was it. This is in the Constitution that we must protect all religions, right? The government is not to get involved in religions. And if you had asked me probably 6 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, it's like, yes, I know, it's freedom of religion. Yes, we want to protect we want to protect that constitutional value. And we do, for sure. The problem is Islam's not a religion. It is so far from being a religion of peace. Most Muslims, I would venture to say, don't even understand their founding of their religion. They don't read the Quran for themselves, so they just don't know, right? It's like I would compare it to how the Democratic Party has focused in on Black people. And they have been brainwashed and brainwashed and brainwashed into thinking the Democratic Party is their savior, when in fact, the Democratic Party is the one keeping them in bondage. They're keeping them on welfare, right? I would say the majority of Muslims, in my opinion, having worked with Muslims for years as a missionary, they just don't know. They don't know. So as for school vouchers, my hard-earned tax-paying dollars funding a school that promotes anti-American ideology, no, we should not be doing that. And we need to have Republican legislators that understand that Islam is not to be protected. It is not. We must be aware of what's happening. But so many, they're just the old school, good old boy. They don't want to rock the boat. It's like their fingers are just in their ears. And nothing's going to change until they wake up.
It's also a misreading of two very important concepts in the American fabric. Freedom of religion is not freedom to exercise any religion you want. If that was the case, we would have let, the Waco, Texas folks and all the rest alone and do their thing. It's actually freedom from a national religion, because they didn't want to have the Church of England walking into people's houses and saying you can't eat fish on any day but Friday. Then you say, oh, well, the separation of church and state, that ain't in the Constitution, that was a letter that was written
Yep.
to a Jewish temple saying, "We're so happy for you guys that you're doing such, good work out there in your community. We'll never make it a national, Jewish country, let's say, like Israel
Hmm.
did." So
Hmm.
both of those are being played by the other
Oh,
side
sure.
to try to claim some kind of discretion for chaos to do whatever they want, and that's not right. And so if Tennessee just doesn't know or isn't reading it correctly, we got to learn them, because
Yeah.
you lose your rights when you give one part of society more rights than the other. And again, I don't think America will ever be a Sharia country. That's what it would
Hmm.
be preventing. As far as
Right.
becoming a Sharia school in your neighborhood, they will if they want to. That's not
Sure.
good unless we say, no, we're cracking down on that because it's anti-American. A different story.
Right.
It's like we don't
Right.
have communism schools, and we're not supposed to have satanic worship schools either. But those are religions for the most part,
Right.
ideologies. We don't want to fund those with state dollars for sure. And so
Hmm.
that's what this
Hmm.
voucher thing will do. It's going to fund, even on the margins, more of what we don't really want, which is antithetical to our taxes.
Right.
Future
But I
sales
think
taxes.
too, in when I was driving up to the Capitol at some point, there's a lot of traffic. And so it diverted me around. So I drove all around and I was through, it's probably what, East Nashville. And I'm looking around. It's like, how come I'm in Little Arabia. All of the street signs, all of the restaurant, all of the signage was all in Arabic.
Yeah,
We don't have that in Chattanooga.
yeah.
There we have one school, we have one mosque. We may have a few like prayer rooms, but I know of one specific. It's a fairly large mosque with an academy, but we don't have those little pockets. So I think that again, Chattanooga is such a small city. Hamilton County is very red, and so we have somehow here we've protected or we've insulated ourselves until this point. I don't know what the future holds for sure, especially if we're going to continue to fund these. I don't know why they wouldn't build more schools knowing that
Oh,
they're going to
no.
get funding.
Yeah,
So
we've seen this in
it's a
Minnesota with, the fake hospices and the
yeah,
child cares. They're going to open up fake schools and they're going to take state money and say, oh,
yeah,
there's actually no children here. But what are they really doing? They're either sending it to Al-Shabaaz in Somalia, like they did in Minnesota,
right.
or something else. I'm firmly convinced that the red-blue fight is a distraction. The real fight is the state of Tennessee's dollars and
Yeah,
what we're talking about right now. So we'll see. But,
yeah.
many in the meantime, we got to shift gears a little bit for the sake of
Go
time.
ahead. Yeah,
Many counties across our state have been adding fertilizer runoff to our water systems. They just tried to pass a bill that would allow
yep,
landfill to be right next to rivers. That would affect you more than even here, even though I live really close to the water supply that we all drink. Anyway, that's without our consent. Quite frankly, most our knowledge, like you said, people don't know this.
mhm.
That failed in committee. How do y'all feel about that?
So yes, I wrote a commentary maybe 2 weeks ago. If you go to our website, tennesseestands.org, it's still on the homepage as of right now. I had no idea. Steve, to be honest with you, I would say up until 3 weeks ago, anytime somebody brought up fluoride, it's not that I rolled my eyes, but it was like, I don't have time. I don't care that there's fluoride in my water. Just total honesty. I have friends that were so passionate about it. It just was not on my radar. And I think that's, for most of us, we all have specific things that are on our radar, right? So I did some research and that's all it took is to find out just a smidge of data showed me that I was wrong. I needed to be very concerned about this. And so obviously we jumped on board, but it didn't. It's not the Farm Bureau and their stronghold over some of our legislators. There's nothing that people could have done to flip that.
Yeah.
We did. I
I
know
wrote
there was.
letters to every single one of those ag committee members, and I said, all you got to do is see how it's made, and you
Yeah,
won't want to
right.
drink it either. And they
But
didn't.
they
They didn't do it.
isn't that shocking? So at the end of
Well,
the
this vote
day,
was more than last time, so I've gotten some
yeah,
converts, but we're
we
we
did.
were just one away.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's very frustrating. And at some point, that's the conversation. Like, okay, if you voted to keep fluoride in water, you voted to keep a fertilizer runoff into our water systems. That's what you
A
just did.
neurotoxin,
A
yeah. And every
neurotoxin.
day you don't do it, it's in there. So yeah, it's terrible.
Right.
I know it's terrible. I wish If when I on my gravestone, when it says, "What did you do for Tennessee?" There's going to be a handful of things, five. That's one of them. That no one was talking
Okay.
about fluoride until I started saying, "Hey, we shouldn't have this in here." And thank
Okay.
God Michelle Renault from your side of
Yep.
town got in
Oh
there because
yeah.
she picked that up. So she gets the credit. I just said I got an idea for you,
Yeah.
because it didn't work last time with the other guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's this long before you and I were even born, this Marxist named Antonio Gramsci. He
Gramsci.
gave his
Hmm.
playbook for promoting Marxism, this demonic
Hmm.
ideology that's really catching fire around, especially with young people. And he called it the Long March Through the Institutions.
Hmm.
Well, I'm 55, and that long march I think is kind of over. I think it's actually now planted its butt right there on the throne in a lot of places in America. Do you think he's had success here in Red, Tennessee?
Oh, for sure. So if I correct me if I'm wrong, because I did not prepare for that question, but the Long March was the robes. So the judicial system, the schools, the public schools, the
All the
university, and
institutions,
the
yep.
churches, right? Those are the four areas. Um,
Corporations, if you look
sure.
at Mussolini, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally, I believe the influence over the church is the greatest. The church is the last stronghold. For me, I go to an amazing church. I go to a church with a pastor that's very aware and that is leading us to enter into this culture armed with knowledge, right? Not just the word of God, but of knowledge of what is happening. The vast majority of churches across the state are silent. They are completely silent. They have no idea what's happening outside of their walls. That is concerning. If we've already lost the public schools, we've already lost the universities, as a nation, we've already lost the justices. If we lose the church across the state, we have what's happening in Texas, where James Tellerico, a nowhere guy, is now running for office and is 100% leading people astray. The conversation he will have with Jesus on his day of reckoning will be
Hmm.
horrific,
Yeah,
right?
he does a lot of
Horrific.
mocking. Yeah.
He does. It's terrible. But people, because they are not armed with truth and what the truth is, they're swayed by it. And
And I,
that
and I
is
also think they've
it's
been lulled to
dangerous.
sleep with that whole church and state misnomer because they
Oh
figured
yeah.
like, well, we just can't. We'll lose our tax exempt status. We will
Right.
just be going against the law. Like we can't.
Oh
That's
yeah.
wrong, and they should. But you're right. And of course, they were threatened to have their entire property seized from them during COVID. So they're kind of
Right.
a little bit tail between their legs at this point,
Yep.
which is sad in this state. Alabama did a better job of that, from what I can see. The most Christian state in the country. 60 something
Hmm.
percent of adults say they're Christian.
Okay. Okay.
We're neighbors, but that only rhymes.
Yeah.
Do you think Marsha Blackburn, as our next governor, presumably, she seems like the heir apparent for sure. Do you think she'll reverse that or be accommodating based on her record in the Senate?
So I believe, let's see. I haven't really thought this out yet. Before I became the executive director of Tennessee Stands, I really just kind of assumed like, okay, Marsha Blackburn, we should all just vote for her. She's, you see what she's done with Riley Gaines and all the, the things and I always just call it propaganda, even if it's propaganda that we like, it's still propaganda. So, but then I started going to the Capitol. And then I started meeting Monty Fritz and I started watching the bills that he's putting forth and listening to him communicate about his bills or the questions that he asks other legislators. And there's something, he knows what he's doing. I appreciate somebody that is transparent and that will sit and meet with the constituents. I think that's very important. I have no idea if he's going to win. It's a David versus Goliath situation for sure, but we've seen miracles happen. Now, your question, do I think I do not believe that Marsha would shut down churches and the ability for churches to be who they should be and equipping and educating their church and shepherding the sheep that the Lord's given to these pastors. I don't believe that she would in any way step on that. Do you? Do you have some thoughts on that?
I don't. I don't. I'm an
Okay.
interviewer, not an opinion guy.
Okay.
That's a lie. I have my opinions, but
Yes.
I know for a fact that the person that you threw out there, Monty Fritz, would be the opposite. He would actually bring probably pastors and priests into his office to discuss situations like that. I don't think Marcia would do that. So whatever the establishment was kind of leaning towards, I anticipate she would do that based on her voting record, but I don't know. I think maybe when she switched gears and became a state leader instead of a national DC leader, she could very
Right.
well do different. So I'm optimistic, but I don't know the answer. I do know this. The National Governors Association, all 50 of them, has always criticized for being a leftist progressive majority. And so I'm wondering if she, and I know he, would play a role moving it to the center, a leadership role back to the
Hmm.
center, or do you think she might keep it liberal?
I don't think that I really don't think she would touch the church. I do not. I do think I would hope, I would really sincerely hope that she would bring it to a more center. I do not love that she was part of the team that rewrote the Republican Party bylaws, or not the bylaws, the platform, excuse me. And they removed the whole clause about same-sex marriage. There are things like that has always been in our platform, and she
Mhm.
was part of the team that removed it. That would be a question I would have for her of why did you do that? Was it the influence of the left? Was it
Well,
the
the Trump administration has definitely said at least 8 years ago they wanted to give away the war on culture, to the left. They won, let them have it. Stop doing that and focus on more business and more,
Mhm.
what they consider the conservative values of dollars and cents. And so I think that had a lot to do with that. And she was the first senator in the nation, I believe, to endorse Trump the first time.
Mhm.
So that probably had a lot to do with that. But
Sure.
as far as the other governors in the state or in the country, if she were to become one of them, I'm wondering if she would lead away from progressivism or join that pack and keep it as is. Because a lot of the decisions Governor Lee made came right from that progressive group.
That
That's why we're even
organization.
talking about vouchers, by the way.
Yeah. Well, and there's a few states, Vivek Ramaswamy, I don't know if he's going to pull off the governorship. And then I have a friend, Victor Marks, is running for Republican governor in Colorado. What if we see a shift
Yeah.
to where we have some more true red-blooded Republicans pick up these governor seats? There could be a
Mhm.
shift.
I would
Again,
like
it's
that
a
because
David
she's
Goliath.
campaigning saying she wants Tennessee values to radiate outward as opposed to what
Hmm.
people have been flocking here to come get them. She wants to, keep that alive. That would be great. And if she can
Yeah,
keep that campaign promise, that would be great. And
that would be awesome. Yeah.
in the meantime, we have
Mhm.
lost a lot of farms,
Mhm.
some to AI data centers, and of course, the Ford City and Elon's XAI. How do you feel about Governor Lee's leadership when it comes to our business-friendly environment and our 300,000 farmers shrinking by the day?
Yeah, no, it's not fair. It's not, I don't support, anytime that we remove or make it harder for small businesses to thrive, for family businesses like farming and building that agriculture, we are moving towards corporate welfare, right? That's not the direction and Tennessee of all states should not be the one leading that charge. It's funny, I'm a small business owner. My husband and I own a food truck, a random business, but we bought a food truck a few years ago, and I hear all the time that Tennessee's the best state to start a business. Now, I don't have any other experience, so maybe that is true, but for me and for us as little small business owners, we are taxed out of our minds. It is so hard to keep our business going. Some months it is, I mean, we are not paying ourselves for several months out of the year. We got to pay the government. So it's hard for me because again, in all, transparency, I've never been in another state to compare owning a business in another state. We do business in Georgia, and it does seem to be a little bit easier with, the taxes there. But no, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to see the corporate welfare happening in our state, the Ford Blue City, get out of here. I was so upset about that. Why in the world we would provide financing to Ford of all people? And Ford at the time was one of the largest corporations that paid for gender transition surgery. They paid for it. So of course they're going to attract employees that want that benefit, and then bringing that to our state. It's not good, but they don't think like that.
Hmm.
You
And I
know what I
don't see
mean?
Marsha running away from that record. I see her
Mm-mm,
not really talking about Lee's legacy, whether it's good, bad, or
for
sideways.
sure.
So, a lot of times, like in Tuberville running against, or running for governor of Alabama, for Kay Ivey's not going to replace. He's running with her record,
Yeah,
like, status quo, and we're going to do, because it was like
it's so
DeSantis.
good.
I can't believe they're
Yeah,
running away from DeSantis, but that's another story for another time. We're out of time.
yeah.
So what's next for you and Tennessee Stands?
Great question. So there's a few things that I would like to see Tennessee Stands step into. One, I can't help but talk about the impact on churches. I came out of a church ministry that we called, it was Civics and Culture, and we equipped our church to step into the cultural conversations. We equipped them with truth. And the greatest fruit of that ministry is that our church is confident to step into these conversations. We've got school board members, we've got representatives at the House, our GOP, we were able to flip that through a lot of people in our church jumping on board. So I would like to see the church mobilized across the state. The church has to get engaged, because at the end of the day, the believers are the ones that are going to carry their conservative values into the next generation, because we have that conviction. And we have that calling to do it. So we're the ones that need to take that seriously. So I'd like to see Tennessee Stands get into more of the church space and equipping believers. And then two, I would like to somehow, we have to close the gap between the citizens and then our elected officials. When that gap increases, which it's created to be an increased gap. They want it to be increased. We make assumptions on both sides about each other, which is not helpful. It's divisive. And so if we can close that gap, and I would like to see citizens more engaged with communicating with their legislators, whether that's through town halls, online Zoom meetings, things like that. But then also our representatives, we need to hold them accountable that they work for us. It has been confused for far longer than you and I have been alive, that the representatives are elected on our behalf and are supposed to be, again, working for us. We are the government. And so I'm still working through how that works, but I shared a few examples, whether it's town halls and things like that, but we've got to close that gap. So it's something I'm pretty passionate about, and I'm not sure how that's going to play out practically, but that's definitely part of the future.
Great. Well, a good way to start with that would be get rid of these paid lobbyists that with taxpayers fund. That would be a
Right?
start. And then, of course, you have to have them say, well, part of the campaign is, will you have town halls? And what I found is their first year, they're amazing. They go up there, they fight the good fight, like
Sure.
Michelle Renault and Richie
Yeah.
before her. And the second year, they get reelected, and they're like, yeah, I'll spend half my time listening to the folks and the other half listening to what these guys want. And by their third time, forget it. So
It's
maybe term
over.
limits.
Yeah,
Ann, you've got your work cut out for you. Thank you
I
for your
do.
time. Thank God for your mission. Gary was the first interview I did in Tennessee when we were milking
Nice.
you. So I'll always respect him for coming on. And I really respect what Tennessee Stands was built to do and is doing. So thank you. Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and follow your social media.
Yeah, so we are on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Under our handle is just Tennessee Stands, and then our website is tennesseestands.org. And from there, you can subscribe, you can donate. We've got a 501c3 and a 501c4, and we are completely funded by the people and the people alone. So any support is definitely being put to use for sure. And then that's where you get our weekly newsletter. We write commentaries, and then in that weekly email, that's where you get the legislative alerts in addition to what we post on socials.
And you can also research individual bills and candidates and see where their money came from and these type of things. That is great
Yes.
for disclosure. You can't really find that on the government website.
It's true. I always forget about that because I'm so new to this that we are going to start working on I have a team that they're incredible and they are starting to work on the legislative report card, but that would be released after session's over. And from that, you can pull up your legislator, see how they voted on every bill that we were following, and then also see who's lining their pockets, whether it's PACs or individuals. It's an incredible resource. So that's that. Thank you for bringing that up for
Yeah,
sure.
I got a list of about 15 that took money from education interests, and you can understand exactly why they're having this fight that they're having up there. It makes a lot more
Right.
sense when you see those numbers. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on. Hang on, everybody. I will be right back.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Thanks for coming back. Now, the Heartland Journal News. Yale's faculty political donations. As a college alumnus, let's say from the undergrad class of a few years back, with fond memories of Southern California late nights and heated debates in residential college commons rooms, I read Jonathan Turley's January 15, 2026 blog post with a mix of recognition and frustration. It's important to remember only about 35% of all U.S. American adults aged 25 and over have at least a bachelor's degree. In some states, the figure is closer to 50%, but it's certainly not for everyone. Turley, a respected George Washington University law professor and frequent commentator on free speech, sarcastically dubs Yale's faculty political donation landscape academic nirvana, a state of supposed enlightenment where no single professor donated to a Republican candidate or group in 2025, according to a Yale Daily News analysis of over 7,000 Federal Election Commission filings. The core finding he highlights is stark. Of 1,099 donations where the donor listed professor as their occupation, 97.6% went to Democrats, 2.4% to independents or nonpartisan groups, and 0 to Republicans. This builds on earlier reports like the Buckley Institute's finding that 27 of Yale's 43 undergraduate departments have no identified Republican faculty member at all, with overall faculty leaning heavily Democratic, around 83% in some surveys. Turley's tone is biting and satirical. He calls this an echo chamber and a purge of conservative voices, arguing it creates an environment where moderate, libertarian, and conservative students must self-censor to avoid backlash. He contrasts this with America's roughly even partisan split and suggests university leaders should create independent centers or institutes to foster ideological diversity, since faculty hiring won't self-correct. From my perspective as an American college grad, the donation data is real and troubling. It's hard to spin 0 Republican contributions as balanced, especially in an off-year election cycle where even small donations could have gone to GOP causes. It aligns with broader trends in elite academia, where surveys consistently show left-leaning majorities among faculty. Many professors openly attribute this to policy alignments. Several quoted in the Yale Daily News pointed to Republican-led cuts to research funding and endowment taxes and perceived attacks on higher ed as reasons they support Democrats. One faculty member noted professors back parties that support open research, institutional autonomy, and financial aid, quote unquote. Still, the absence of any Republican donating professors raises legitimate questions about intellectual diversity. Yale's mission emphasizes open inquiry and exposure to a wide range of ideas. Yet, when entire departments lack conservative viewpoints, students miss out on rigorous challenges to progressive assumptions. This isn't about forcing quotas, it's about whether hiring processes unintentionally or intentionally filter out diverse perspectives. Turley's call for structural fixes like independent programs echoes what some alums have advocated for years. Ultimately, Turley's article serves as a wake-up call. Yale has produced brilliant minds across the spectrum, including notable conservative alumni, but the current faculty homogeneity risks turning it into more of an ideological monoculture, like Harvard and Stanford, than a true marketplace of ideas. I'd love to see proactive steps toward broader perspectives, not for partisan balance, but to better prepare students for a divided world. The nirvana Turley mocks might feel peaceful to some, but it risks intellectual stagnation for all. Just wait till they get a job and see their first paycheck. They will become conservative, whether they like it or not. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Ann Lowery, for stepping into the arena in Tennessee. Trump complacency syndrome is a real thing, like Trump derangement syndrome, but where you think everything will take care of itself with Trump back in office. But guess what? The midterms could wipe out the Republican majority, and a Democrat could be back in the White House in 2028 when Trump can't run. So it's up to you to codify these conservative gains, especially in red states showing signs of going purple or even blue, like Virginia. It can happen. It was Teddy Roosevelt at the Sorbonne in Paris, April 23rd, 1910, that said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man," in this case of today's guest, the woman, "who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat." Us podcasters are like Roman gladiators. It's not a battle to the death, but truth and fighting for our God-given rights are a blood sport at times. Don't sit in the stands, get in the arena. The left sure does. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help, and still ad-free, and voting is still open for the 2025 Heartland Awards. Show those artists your support. Peace in our time, and glory to God.
It's a long way to Nashville from that Napa Valley vine. Put me on a road less traveled. Lord, now I know why. God knew I'd get there in His perfect time.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of HeartlandJournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.